Now, our first witness this morning is Mr. O.
Yes, that's correct.
The reason, as those of you who've been following the inquiry will know, why someone is referred to by letter rather than by their given name, is to preserve their anonymity. And in order to support their anonymity, I make, in most cases, and I will make in this case, what's called a restriction order. It's a formal order. It's serious. Any breach of it is a serious matter. It is a contempt of court. Accordingly, what I have to do is to read out the order, and I'll do that now in the case of Mr. O. It is ordered that the name and address of witness W1297, that's Mr. O to you and me, and any other identifying information, such as the witness's image or a description of their appearance, cannot be disclosed or published in any form unless express permission is given by me or by the solicitor to the inquiry acting on my behalf. Witness W1297 must be referred to only as Mr. O. This order remains in force for the duration of the inquiry and at all times thereafter, unless otherwise ordered, and I may vary or revoke the order by making a further order during the course of the inquiry. Now, it follows from that that if you feel inclined to take photographs, as I know a number of you do, in and around the hotel and or just outside, please take care that you do not inadvertently capture an image of Mr. O. Mr. O will be in front of you. You can see for yourselves what he looks like, but you can't tell anyone else what he looks like. And you certainly can't take a photograph of him without his express permission. The press won't. You shouldn't. You mustn't, in fact. I've just ordered you not to. So there we are. Let's have Mr. O, please.
Thank you. Mr. O, your full name is known to the inquiry. Could you please repeat after me? I do solemnly, sincerely,
I do solemnly and sincerely
and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Mr. O, you have mild haemophilia A.
Correct.
How often did you need to attend hospital because of bleeds?
Not that regularly, a few times a year. I think the most was about 6 or 7 times in 1 year. As I generally got older, it was less and less.
Now, you're quite softly spoken. Would you mind coming a little bit closer to the microphone so it picks up what you're saying? Thank you. Please can we have document 1297004 and the 6th page of that exhibit. We can see here that you received cryoprecipitate until 1980 and then changed over to Factorate.
Yeah, that's right? That's right, yeah.
Was there any discussion with your parents that you're aware of about whether you should move over to Factor products?
No.
Were they informed of any risks involved in that change?
No.
What were your parents told about the type of products that you would receive?
Nothing at all, other than it was a new treatment. It was obviously better than cryo, and it would work quicker, and it'd be better for us to use. That was basically it.
They were told that you were allergic to cryoprecipitate.
Yeah, I think sometimes when I had a lot of it, I did have to have Piriton. But I don't think there's anything like major.
And they were given to believe, you've said in your statement, that that was the reason why you were being transferred over at that point to Factor 8.
Yeah, yeah.
Could we have then document 1297008? It's a letter from Dr. Hill at the Central Public Health Laboratory. And if we look there at the very beginning of it, it says that you were a relatively mild haemophiliac who was treated solely with cryoprecipitate until 1980. He was then treated with armour factor 8, and obviously in the early stages of his treatment it would have been an intermediate purity product that was non-heat treated. So in the early days, the product you were receiving, it seems from this letter, was not heat treated.
Yes.
If we can then have 1297014, please, Paul. This is a much later letter in 1994, which says that haemophilia was causing you very little problem, but unfortunately you became infected with HIV when you were being treated with heat-treated concentrate at a time when we hoped that concentrates were safe. So in 1994, the understanding was that you had been treated with heat-treated products.
Yeah.
And then if we can return to 008, the long letter we were just looking at, and the first main paragraph, we can see that it says that in 1984 you'd received treatment on just 2 occasions, and on each of those occasions you were treated with a different batch of armour factor 8. In 1985 you received treatment on 4 occasions, and the dates are given. On each of these occasions he received a different batch of armour factor 8. He then received no further treatment with blood products until 1986, and he received a single treatment on the 27th of January in 1986. If we can then go to 1297011 and page 2, apologies, the next page, Paul, we can see the entry in your records from the 27th of January 1986, and we can see the number there, Y83006C. And you believe that it was that batch that infected you with HIV.
Yeah.
And you say that because you think that batch was part of an armour batch referred to in the Lindsay report.
Yes.
If we can have 1297002, we'll just track through some of the documents on page 2 of that. At the top of the page, a little bit before that, Paul. Thank you. It's an extract from the Lindsay report where there is reference made to Dr. Lawler indicating the untested plasma from that armour batch A28306 originates from was made into similar types of armour product which infected haemophiliac boys in the Birmingham area. You believe that the batch you received, Y83006C, came from the batch A28306.
Yeah, although it was the same, but different batch numbers.
It's fair, isn't it, Mr. O? There's absolutely no doubt that you were infected from factor products, but it's fair that there's no documentary evidence to show definitively that Y83006C was a part of A28306, but it's your belief that you can make that inference.
Yes.
And the reason you make that inference, as I understand it, and I'm sure you'll please correct me if I'm not presenting this correctly, but the reason you make that inference is if we go to the next page of this exhibit, there is reference to 2 people seroconverting. If we see towards the bottom of the page, note, only a week later on the 21st of February, armour batch is found to be the likely cause of HIV infection HIV infection in a UK haemophiliac. And then by late September 86, ARMA's HT factor rate is again reported to have led to seroconversions in another 2 haemophiliacs in the UK. And you believe that you were one of those 2 haemophiliacs.
Yeah.
If we can then have document one... Sorry, thank you.
Just pausing there for a moment. Is there any link between batch A 28306, given in February 1986, and the heat-treated factor rate in September 86, drawn in the Lindsay report?
It's not entirely clear, sir.
But it seems to be clear that on both occasions, the batch, whether it was the same batch or different batches, gave rise to seroconversion. So one or the other.
That's exactly the point. So it's clear that there was seroconversion from the ARMA products. It's just not entirely clear that it was A28306.
And if the reports are accurate, it meant that the heat treatment, which might have been claimed to have rendered it safe, didn't work.
Indeed. That's something that will need to be considered further.
Can I just go back
Please do.
a couple of documents? Because I just noticed something on the one, I think it was with Dr. Hill's writing to the laboratory.
That is it's the 008 document, which I was actually about to come back to for you anyway. So 1297008.
Yeah.
If we just pause, do carry on.
Yeah, if you go to the bottom, straight to the bottom of it, and it's actually saying there that there are 3 other boys who are seronegative who have also received the same batch of material as myself that I received in January 86. We have tested these boys in the past week and all 3 are currently seronegative. One boy received the dose on the 23rd of January, the other received it on the 2nd of February, and the other received it on the 10th of February. We are intending to follow these boys to see whether or not they seroconvert. So that's 3 boys.
Well, it's 3 other boys, so that would be 4 boys. So it's not entirely clear that you were one of the 3 referred to in the Lindsay report, because there's obviously 3 others and you here. But there's certainly no doubt that A factor product was the cause of your infection.
Yeah.
Well, there was nowhere else you could have got it from, was there?
No. I hadn't used any other products than that.
So I was just trying to be careful about the link between the boys mentioned in Lindsay and the precise position of Mr. A. In any event, if we stay on 008, we can see in the first main paragraph that you had been tested for HIV on a number of occasions. If we look at that first large paragraph, in April 1985 he was shown to be HIV antibody negative, and I think that sample you probably have at Colindale as you tested him. On the 9th of July 1985 he was still negative, was also negative on the 29th of April 1986. The first positive sample we had was taken on the 16th of June 1986, and the test has remained positive on the 29th of July and again on the sample taken on the 26th of September 1986. Were your parents aware that you were being tested?
No.
And at the end of that paragraph, we see these samples are stored at East Birmingham Hospital in Dr. Flewitt's laboratory and could be made available for further testing if you think this is indicated. Were your parents aware that samples were being held in Colindale and in Dr. Flewitt's laboratory?
No.
And if we go to the very end of the letter, Paul, we can see that Dr. Hill finishes his letter by saying, "I'd be grateful if you could think about the problem, and if you feel there is any way in which further investigations may help clarify about this immunising event, I'd be grateful for your help." Was anything of that sort said to you?
No.
I should say at this point that Dr. Hill has been invited to respond to your statement, and any response that becomes available will be uploaded on the website. Can we then have document 1297007, please? And the final long paragraph. It says, up until May 1986, there was no evidence that Mr. O had been exposed to this virus, but unfortunately the sample tested in June 1986 and a repeat sample in July 1986 have shown that he has developed antibodies. We are looking into this matter at the moment to be sure that this is a true finding, as false positives are not uncommon with some of the tests. As yet, I have not mentioned this to Mr. O's parents, but if it proves that he is HTLV-3 antibody positive, I'll be seeing them to explain the situation to them. Until September 1986, your parents were not aware that they'd been tested positive for HIV. That you'd tested positive, were they?
I think it was October.
October.
Yeah.
How were they told that you were?
I think they, well, from my records, I had a letter sent to them saying that they needed to make an appointment to see Dr. Hill, as he wanted to discuss with them my recent test results.
In your statement, you've referred to them being called to a meeting at the Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
What was that meeting in September, October 1986?
I think it was like a parents' clinic that he had, where obviously parents, whether they was all sat there together, I don't know, but you know, they obviously went in and seen him, and then that was when they was told that I was infected with HIV.
You've said in your statement that there was a bigger meeting of them and other parents.
Yeah.
And were they all told at the same time that the children were infected?
I don't know.
From what you were told. When you were 14, you were told about your HIV infection. Can you tell us about that?
Well, it was just after Christmas, towards the end of the new year, and I was out playing with my mates somewhere, had plans or something, and then they said to me, "Oh, we've got to go to the hospital," and I was like, "Why?" You know, and they said, because, you know, well, they never really answered me, and I just ended up going anyway, but I knew something was wrong. And then we ended up going in, and I've sat down with him, and he's just said to me, you know, have you heard, you know, about HIV, which of course I had, because of the adverts and all that kind of stuff, and really, I knew what was coming, even at that age, because what else would he be saying? And he just basically told me that I was, and basically did have any questions. I mean, you know, what is a 14-year-old supposed to say to that?
What did he say to you about future relationships?
Well, he was basically kind of saying to me about future girlfriends and, you know, having to be careful or not having one at all. Basically putting the onus onto me, which I didn't like any of that. I just wanted to get out of there, really. You know, I'd heard enough. And then obviously on the way home, when my parents were trying to talk to me about it, I was just like, I'm not interested. I just wanted to forget about it. And that's kind of how it played out at home. We didn't talk about it. Obviously, unless I was getting checked, you know, for my appointments and stuff like that, or when medication started coming out. But it was never, you know, I just had to grow up like rapid because of obviously this, you know, how HIV was portrayed at the time, and you know, it was vilified. There was absolutely no way that, you know, anyone was going to find out, and that was probably the most important thing to me about it. I mean, at the time I was told, the first thing I thought about when I was told is the fact of never having kids, which is quite strange, isn't it? Considering, like, you know, I'd just been dropped to like a death sentence on me.
So go on.
I forgot where I was now.
You were just saying that you realised that you'd never have kids.
Yeah, and the fact is, I mean, at the time, that you know, just people not knowing was, I didn't worry about the dying part. You know what I mean? I didn't really think about it. It was what scared me to death, because of how HIV was being vilified and what would be the consequences. And I'd also heard of, you know, people having their houses burnt, you know, and the cars smashed up and all that kind of stuff. And there's no way that I'd want my family to go through that, or me.
You were told at that appointment that you had a 3% chance of becoming unwell in any year.
Well, I don't know how he worked that out.
But that's your recollection of what you were told?
Yeah, that's what he said, yeah.
Well, if it was true, it would mean that, on probability, he would have survived for at least 17 years. Was that the impression you were given?
No.
What was the impression you were given?
Yeah.
What was the impression you were given?
Well, basically, I just thought that, you know, I had a couple of years. And really, I mean, there was, you know, he said to me there's like drugs available, but, you know, I mean, AZT was a cancer drug.
Were you offered any counselling or psychological support at that point?
No.
After you were told about your HIV diagnosis, you've said you were asked at every appointment about whether you had a girlfriend.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't really have, you know, like, much of a relationship with Dr. Hill anyway. You know, I didn't particularly like him. So he's not the kind of person I would have actually spoken to about anything anyway. But it was just his overall attitude of that every time I went, rather than, you know, my health, which was like glossed over, are you all right? Yeah. And then he was just obsessed with that all the time. Have you got a girlfriend? You know, and all that kind of stuff. You know, talking to a teenage boy. You know what I mean? And it's always felt to me that the onus is on me now. You know what I mean? And I remember, you know, from last week or the week before, somebody gave evidence that the brother infected a girl, and Dr. Hill mentioned that to me. It rang a bell when I heard it, and he said to me at the time, he goes, you know, we've already had one idiot, you know, who's infected somebody else, which, you know what I mean? And I was like, what, you know what I mean? I didn't like the tone of that at all, like, and that was it. After that, I just really didn't want to go back, and I tried my best to avoid going. And then obviously I was having letters going home saying I'm missing appointments. I even sometimes turned up and checked in and then sat there and thought, and just went home, because I just didn't want the hassle of somebody, you know, grilling me all the time over something that they'd given me. You know what I mean? I'm not there because of anything I've done.
You also contracted hepatitis B and hepatitis C.
Yeah.
How were your parents told that you had contracted hepatitis B?
By letter. I had a letter.
That was in about 1985.
Yeah.
What were they told?
I think it was 84. I think it was 84. Nothing, just had a letter saying, you know, you've been infected with that. And it was just basically saying, you know, you've got to be careful with, you know, sharing toothbrushes and, you know, sucking the same sweets, that kind of thing. And also, it did say that they wanted to test my parents and my brother, which they didn't take up.
You've since discovered that the doctor had also written to the school medical officer.
Yeah.
Were your parents aware of that?
No, I've only found that out when I got my records, that they'd actually written to the school authority and told them that they had a child in their school who had hepatitis B.
And then in 1980, you were jaundiced.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you remember of that? You were obviously very young,
Yeah,
but what do you remember?
Well, yeah, I was 6, yeah. I'm not, you know, I do kind of remember the time, because it was coming up towards Christmas and I was off school for 3 months and I was just like yellow and my spleen was enlarged, like sticking out. I was just kind of like unwell for a few months, and I went back to school because it kind of like settled down in the January, and that was that. You know, it wasn't mentioned again. It wasn't explained to my mum or my dad about what it was, or if that it was like a big risk to you, because obviously they didn't think anything of it at the time. They just thought it was something that people were getting through having factor.
Could we have document 1297005, please? It's a letter dated January 1981, and in the first paragraph we can see that you'd been seen in the haematology clinic on the 23rd of January 1981. And it says, as you know, he's a mildly affected haemophiliac who's recently had an episode of jaundice, which was of the non-A and non-B variety, which we're beginning to see rather more often these days. He's now much better in himself and his jaundice has disappeared. And then if we go down to the last paragraph, he's obviously getting over this episode of hepatitis, and I've made arrangements to see her, should be him, again, for routine haemophilia follow-up in 1 year. Were your parents, as far as you're aware, were your parents told anything that this was of the non-A, non-B variety or anything of the sort?
No.
If we can have document 1297010 again, please. It's the letter from January 1989, which we looked at. I'm not sure if we've looked at before. It's and if we can go to the first paragraph, we can see there that there's reference to an earlier visit at the hospital. We discussed with him that he was HIV seropositive, so that refers to that first time you were told that you were HIV positive. And it says, I explained that he had to be careful with any blood spillages because of his hepatitis, but there was no need to do anything extra because of this other virus he was carrying. At your meeting in 1988, do you recall any discussion about hepatitis? No.
I would have just thought that he was just talking about hepatitis B. But I can't see, blood spillages, if you've got HIV, is equally the same, isn't it, really?
But as far as you're aware, you weren't, hepatitis non-A, non-B wasn't particularly discussed.
No.
And then in 1995, you were told you had hepatitis C dating back to 1980. What were you told?
Well, that was when I think it was my second appointment, when I'd moved from the children's to the QE. I saw, and he kind of just told me that, unfortunately you've tested positive for hepatitis C. And I was like, all right. And that was basically it, he said, I don't think you'll have anything to worry about. So, nothing was really said about it. But, I mean, at the time, I had big problems because there still wasn't any drugs out. I was taking AZT and DDI, which was all there was. So I don't suppose you'd want to start worrying me about anything else, that could happen in the future. So nothing more was said about it, really.
So we saw a moment ago that the doctors were aware of non-A, non-B in 1981, but as far as you're concerned, you don't believe you were told about it until 1995. No. How did that lack of knowledge affect you emotionally?
Well, it was just, I was already angry at what I'd already, with the HIV infection, and it was just like just something else. You know what I mean? I've been dropped on, so that was 3 now. I've had HIV, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. You
were then retested 6 months later?
Yeah.
After that first positive test of hepatitis C. What was the result of that retest?
I cleared.
And what's your understanding of what had happened?
Well, I always thought that I had hepatitis B first, but until I actually got my medical records, I realised that it was actually I had hepatitis C first. And from what I've heard from other people, got those in different orders. And it seemed to me that, I was told that it kind of helped the situation that I got hepatitis B secondary, because that's what seemed to, get hold of me and get rid of the other one, because I've still got active hepatitis B, which is being treated through, my antiretrovirals.
So you'd cleared the hepatitis
Yeah.
C naturally
Yeah,
at some point in that 6 months.
Yeah.
But you still attend every year for a PCR test.
yeah. Well, I have blood. They check that routinely with every time, every 6 monthly when I go to the GU clinic for HIV. They test you for everything.
You also believe you may have been infected with VCJD.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I had a letter come through, as others did at the same time, January 2001, just basically saying that it turned out that I'd received a factor from a donor that had recently died of CJD. And basically, if you wanted to speak to him about it, which I did do, but there's not a lot. That did frighten me, to be honest. Because you knew what would happen with that. That's just like, that's like a horrible way to die.
But in January 2004, you received a letter saying you were not at risk of VCJD.
Yeah, 2004, I got another letter saying that actually, the batch that I had is no longer implicated in their risk assessment.
But you're still concerned in case you are.
Well, it says on my UK HCDO records that I am at risk. So, and that was updated, I think, 2007 by Frank Hill.
Can you tell us what the physical impact of your HIV and hepatitis B has been on you?
Well, growing up with it, I always struggled to maintain weight and eat because I always felt sick. And then when I started taking AZT and then after that DDI, that used to knock me about. But yeah, and it was just like when you're starting to just lose weight and you just start feeling that you start looking like you've got, you're looking like you've got the AIDS face.
You've also said that you lacked energy, had very bad lethargy.
Yeah.
And you've been much more susceptible to infections. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Well, about 2007, I had a Staph aureus infection in my right knee, which I was hospitalised for. And they say once you've had that once, Staph aureus infection will just pop up anywhere. So I've had it in my face. I had a big mass on my face that had to be drained. And then a couple of times with dental extractions that I've ended up being in hospital for a week because I've ended up getting infected from having the tooth pulled.
Just before we talk about 2004 and the tuberculosis you suffered, can you tell us a little bit about your medication and the difficulties you've had with that? You've said it's been difficult to get your medication right because of the interplay between the HIV and the hepatitis B.
Basically one of the drugs that you can treat HIV with, you can also treat hepatitis B with. So that's always been, from 2005 onwards, I started getting treated for hepatitis B because, I wasn't having any treatment for it up until then. But up to the 2004 incident with the tuberculosis, I just used everything that was. There wasn't any drugs that I wasn't resistant to that were working, so I was slowly on the decline to AIDS, basically. And then I kind of started getting a cough and I was losing weight quite rapidly, weren't eating well. And because of the way, a lot of us were the same where, things didn't concern you like they probably should. Now I look back at it and think a lot of it's stupid, leaving things. But I started getting a cough and that, I left that for a couple of weeks and then that went on. And then I started coughing up blood. And then I just happened to phone, and this was a Friday, and I've just happened to phone the haemophilia unit up, and I've spoke to the community nurse, and I've gone, I'm coughing up blood. And she said, well, you better get up here then. So I went up to the hospital, it was a Friday afternoon, and said, right, you've got to have an X-ray. So I went out of an X-ray, sat outside for half an hour, and I thought, I'm going home. I didn't want to wait around, and then I just drove home, and then on the way home, our social worker phoned me up and said, you better get back here, because you've got pneumonia. And I was like, I'm not coming back now. I said, and he said, well, you got to. He said, you need treatment. I said, I'll come back Monday. So I left it over the weekend carrying on. And then by Monday, I was like, I couldn't walk very far, I was that knackered out. And my brother dropped me up the hospital, and he was like, I'm coming in with you. And I'm like, no, because he was like stubborn. I didn't want anyone to help me ever. You know what I mean? It's like my problem. I'll do everything my way. And it literally took me, through having to stop like every 100 yards to sit down, it literally took me 40 minutes to get in the hospital and up to the second floor to go to the uni. And then I was hospitalised then. Yeah, they admitted me where I stayed in for a week. And towards the end of that week, they diagnosed me with tuberculosis.
You were then really very unwell for 2.5 years.
Yeah. I mean, I came out after a week. They put me on standard TB drugs, which is like 3 months. I got a bit better, but I wasn't 100% better. And that was how it stayed. I just weren't well. I mean, anybody else would have gone back at the hospital, but I was like, I didn't, even as a child, did not like staying in hospital, and even as an adult, I was like, I don't want to, I'm not going back there. So I just stayed at home, and then while I was in the hospital, one of the GU professors came and saw me and said, look, there's a new drug coming out that we're hoping to get on licence, as on a named patient basis, but we're not getting it until like next April at the earliest. So this was like May. So from May to April, I wasn't taking anything. So really, I was lucky that I didn't die in between those 2 times, because there wasn't anything that I could take that would do anything, because I was resistant to everything. So April 2005, I went to the GU clinic, and there was this new drug out called T20, and it was an injectable, and it was like subcutaneous, just under the skin. But because of haemophilia, the injection site reactions were horrendous. I mean, you'd inject yourself, and then later on in the day, you'd have like an egg sticking out of you, and really sore lumps. And I had to inject myself twice a day, which I did so for just over a year. And it was getting to the point where, you couldn't go anywhere near where you'd been injecting from, because, it'd just make everything, even more painful. And it got to the point where I was using my thighs, sticking it in my thighs, and then towards the end I was sticking it in my backside, because there was nowhere else I could go that I hadn't been before.
But after about 18 months of this new drug, your HIV was undetectable.
Well, no, it was undetectable within 2 weeks. They put me on that, and they, for some reason, gave me AZT again and a drug called lamivudine, which I was resistant to as well. So really, I was undetectable in 2 weeks. Monotherapy, which was quite remarkable. It was like, it saved my life, really. If I hadn't have had that, I wouldn't have lasted much longer.
You've still had a number of opportunistic infections since then.
Well, yeah. I mean, what happened once I became undetectable, and obviously slowly my immune system was starting to wake up, and then I went through like 3 weeks of like hell, of like immune reconstitution. It's like when your immune system is starting to wake up again, and I was like in bed for 3 weeks, like totally, like I couldn't get up. It must, I've probably related to like probably something like cold turkey with drug users, that kind of thing. That's what it was like, and it's because your immune system's waking up, and you're starting to fight other little things that you've got that you obviously didn't know you had. And then I went on holiday to Spain in the August, and then I had like I mean, you can still see it a bit, like a vein, like really sticking out of my neck. Which, like when I bent down, it felt like somebody was like strangling me. So when I got home, I went to the hospital again, and I ended up having a bronchoscopy, where they took some biopsies of, you know, all the gunk that was in my lungs, and then they found out exactly what I had, which was like it's like Mycobacterium microti, it's called. It's like you know, a type of tuberculosis, but like a really nasty one that needed a lot more medication to shift it, and then obviously the standard TV. So then I was on 5 antibiotics for a year and a half to make sure to get rid of it. So then with my new drugs I was taking 22 tablets a day and 2 injections. So I felt like, you know, eating it, like sickness and that was just like terrible. Couldn't eat nothing. So I was like, you know, 7, 8 stone.
But slowly since then you've physically recovered.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it took a lot of time. It was like gradual. And then just after that, you know, that's when I started having problems with my knees, especially my right knee. I don't know whether it was down to the virus, the tuberculosis, because I mean that can get into your joints. But it certainly wasn't anything to do with haemophilia, because I'd very rarely had any bleeds in my knees. And then the right one went, and then the left one went. And then I had to wait 10 years before I could have any replacements, because I was too young and they wouldn't do it.
In your statement, you've also described your liver and renal function as erratic.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, my like normal level is like what, you know, it's like alcoholic kind of. If somebody that didn't know you, you know, looked at your test results, they'd assume that you were an alcoholic. And what the HIV drugs do as well is push it up, you know, further because of the toxicity of them. So that's always been, you know, there's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean? We can't like stop taking the medication because, you know, it'll just come back.
What's the emotional impact been on you of all of that?
I mean, from when I was told, I was like, you know, just angry about what, you know, what happened, and the fact is that nobody was bothered. And it was just a case of, right, you know, you've got this, get on with it, which is what, you know, I tried to do. But I mean, sometimes, you know, things get on top of you. You know, but I just carried on and tried to, you know, be as normal as possible.
You said you've tried to maintain a positive outlook on life, and I believe it's better to be grateful that I'm still here rather than thinking about when I'm not going to be here anymore.
Yeah.
And I believe that this positivity is what keeps me alive.
Yeah.
But you've got a lot of pent-up anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can be quite aggressive and argumentative.
Yeah.
When that all comes out.
Yep.
You've said in your statement, if anyone asked me how my life has been, I'd say it's been miserable.
Well, a lot of it has, yeah. Not all of it, but, you know, it hasn't all been bad, but, you know, it's kind of like having that burden at such a young age, you know, like I said about growing up fast and, you know, accepting it, because there's nothing you can do about it. And, I don't know, it's kind of like, just matured me really quickly, you know, and you know, it was quite level-headed about it. You know, as a lot of us were, because you had to be. You know, I mean, you know, there was never any. Well, when I was younger, anyway, you know, there was never any crying. You know, when I was told, I went home and I went out with my mates. You know what I mean? It was like that. And then, like, you know, I did think about. The only time I'd really think about it, if anything, I mean, things like when Freddie Mercury died. You know, things like that, and it's all over there. You know, Kenny Everett died and stuff like that. and then you think about yourself and think, oh, that's, you know, I've got that. You know what I mean? It's just like, because I just put it to the back of my mind and just like tried to like just get on with it.
In 1998, when you were a bit older, you had a particularly useful social worker.
Yes.
Who referred you to a psychotherapist for support.
Yes. Yeah, she was great.
How much therapy did you receive at that point?
I saw her for a couple of months, you know, until I kind of felt a bit better. You know, I mean, at that point I was really low because I was just fed up. You know, I mean, I was working at the time and I was getting tired, and you know, and I just think to myself, what am I doing this for? You know what I mean? For what? And I had like, you know, I started to have that kind of attitude where, you know, I just couldn't be bothered with anything. So, you know, Mark suggested that I should, you know, see this psychotherapist. She was really good.
And then about 10 years later, you had a few more sessions with someone.
Yeah, well, the same person, yeah, but you know, she retired now. So.
Do you think that many sessions is enough?
Well, no, because I found it difficult to kind of like talk to somebody about it, because I had to like them in the first place. You know what I mean? If I didn't, because I mean, in the early days there was a social worker, a woman at the QE when I first moved over, and she was like too in your face type of thing. You know what I mean? I'll come and talk to me, and I never liked that. You know, I wanted to approach, or I wanted to talk to somebody when I wanted to. You know what I mean? Not when they wanted to try and get stuff out of me.
You've said in your statement that telling people about your infections has always been on a need-to-know basis.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not many people that know.
One person you were able to tell was a previous partner.
Yeah.
You'd been together for a little while and had bought a house together.
Yeah.
That she was then killed in an accident.
Yeah.
What happened to you after that?
I suppose it's I couldn't believe it really. That I'd already had what I had, and then that happened. And I was kind of like questioning them, thinking, you know, what, I must have been like a really horrible person in a previous life or something to keep getting punished. And then obviously I felt guilty that she'd been killed. You know what I mean? There was nothing wrong with her. And there's me with all this. You know what I mean? And it's just like, and from then on, I just kind of like, that was like the last straw, really. And I was just like, I didn't care. Just really didn't care whether I lived or not. So obviously then I just went off the rails. You know, drinking more, just going out all the time. Working long hours, not eating properly. And obviously at that time as well, you know, the meds were starting to fail as well. Because that was, you know, around 2000, 2001. So kind of like, you know, I thought, well, I just couldn't be bothered with any of it. And I was missing hospital appointments. And
you've described your life starting to spiral out of control.
Yeah. Yeah.
About 9 years ago, you met your partner and felt able to tell her about your infection.
Yeah.
What was her reaction?
Well, it was always a case of, you know, whenever you're told, obviously, you couldn't tell somebody straight away from meeting them, you know what I mean, because you just couldn't. You had to, you know, you had to start seeing them for a while to kind of get the gist of what they were like and whether they was going to take it well or not. But I mean, to be fair, I've never told anybody where they flipped out. You know, everybody that ever had to know was totally fine about it.
By then, your HIV was undetectable.
Yeah.
And you said in your statement she was fine about it.
Yeah.
Just wasn't an issue.
Yeah. No, she was totally fine about it. She just has to put up with my moods all the time now and stuff like that.
In terms of your family, who's aware of your infection?
Well, my mum, my dad, my brother, and that's about it really. The wider family, no. Well, I don't know if they do or not. Whether my mum's told them, I don't know. But certainly no one's ever said anything to me.
But you're still secretive about your infections?
Oh yeah, big time.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, you know, even from when I was younger, I mean, I hated being a haemophiliac before any of this even started. You know, I hated the fact of going to hospital all the time and constantly being told I can't do this and I can't do that. So obviously, like, I did, and then I got hurt. And that's how treatment.
You've said you feel like you've been living a double life.
Yeah, well, what you do, like, it's like being you've had to become like a professional liar. You know what I mean? Where you do things and, you know, people will start saying, how'd you do that? Or, you know, and you've got to have, like, continuity stories all the time about what you're doing and why. And
you keep all medical letters and medication hidden in the house.
Yeah.
Never leave anything lying around the house that might suggest that you are infected.
No. Even throwing the rubbish out and stuff like that. I like ripping labels off bottles and stuff like that and making sure the boxes are ripped up so nobody knows what they are. Just paranoia, really.
Your best friend of 30 years doesn't know you're infected?
No.
What is it that stopped you telling them?
I don't know. I suppose it goes back to, like, you know, not liking the fact that I was a haemophiliac in the first place and being like a special case kind of thing. You know what I mean? Where people felt sorry for you. Because they did. You know what I mean? And with that, you know, I'm not that type of person. I don't like that kind of thing. You know what I mean? I'd rather just not say anything.
How did your infections impact your schooling?
Well, apart from not being bothered about exams and stuff like that, you know, it didn't really. I still went. You know, I liked having a laugh. You know, I wasn't like a miserable case. You know, I liked school. I enjoyed school. You know, and I went through. You know, the only thing I regret now is probably bonking off more because obviously I could have got away with it. Because I remember in like the fourth year, I had about from October to December off. It weren't until like my parents got a letter come through like before Christmas saying I hadn't been at school for like 3 months. I was like, I don't want to go to school. What can I say? You know what I mean? You got a death sentence hanging over your head, like they're not really going to tell me off. So, you know, yeah, but I enjoyed it. I mean, I did pass a couple of GCSEs.
But didn't turn up to very many of the exams.
No. You know, I mean, I probably could have done all right if I'd have bothered, but, you know, I passed through and I didn't really try, so.
But you said your parents didn't particularly mind your truancy because of the circumstances you were in.
No, I mean, but you know, bear in mind, I mean, some days I was tired, or when I'd come home, I'd be straight on the city and be asleep for a couple of hours. You know, and that's like how it was for a couple of years.
When you saw the careers advisor at school, what did you tell them?
Oh, I always just told them I wanted to be a lorry driver.
Why was that?
Because you had to be 21 to do that.
And then you said to them that you were going to do nothing until then?
Yeah. So what are you going to do in between? I said, nothing, I'll just stay at home.
You've done various jobs over the years, including working as an HGV driver.
Yeah.
And at one stage you became self-employed, worked with a business partner.
Yeah, I had a few lorries.
What happened to that business?
Well, when I started to get ill, and I knew that I was, you know, my drugs were failing, and I was like starting to lose weight, I knew.
That was just before the tuberculosis.
Yeah, that's just before that
run
happened,
into 2004.
Yeah, I knew I was getting ill, and it was just panic really. I just dropped it all, sold it, and you know, my partner carried on I think with his, but I just dropped everything, which is, you know, lucky really, because if I'd have left it, I wouldn't have been well enough to deal with anything. And plus the fact is, as soon as I got ill, I mean, I didn't go out. I didn't go out for 18 months. The only time I left the house was to go to the hospital for appointments or to the shop. That's it, because I didn't want to see anyone to see what I looked like, you know, because I was like 7, 8 stone.
And the reason you dropped the business so quickly was because you were scared of your business partner asking
Yeah,
questions?
exactly, yeah. You know, for him to actually see, you know, how ill I was and what I looked like.
Financially, what was the impact of that?
Well, I went from earning, you know, a good living to nothing. and because I'd been self-employed, I didn't manage to get any benefits for just over a year. So by the time they paid me, like back pay, I think they owed me something like about £8,000, and I was like living on McFarlane Trust payment at the time was like about 220 quid. So I was just having to live on cards.
So by the time you got better from the TB,
Yeah.
you had a huge debt.
Yeah.
Once, eventually, from around 2007, you'd recovered enough to do some more work,
Yeah,
and you worked for a few more years as a courier,
yeah,
but then had to stop.
yeah.
Why was that?
Well, that was when my knees were packing up, and I was having, I had infection in my right knee, which was, that just collapsed. So my leg was kind of like bent. It was like stuck like that. I couldn't straighten it. So then I had to have manipulation for about 6 weeks. So I had to go to the plaster room, and the physio would kind of like, there'd be two guys, one holding my foot over my knee, kind of like pushing down to try and, because it was all like caked with like infection and gook inside my knee. It was kind of like, the joint was solid, so they was just pressing it out to straighten the leg back out. And when they'd got a bit of movement, I'd have it plastered. Then I'd have that on for a week, and then go back and they'd do the same. I mean, it was painful. And then for some reason, my other knee started to fall to bits then as well. But at that time, I'd had the infection in the right one, and it was really bad. And there was no way that anybody would have touched it, because you have a knee replacement and you have any kind of bacteria in your knee, you could end up having your leg off. So they wouldn't entertain touching that because of my age. It was 10 years until I was 40.
You said that when you were working as a courier, you found it difficult because you had a bag of medication with you.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, you became too unwell to carry on working.
Yeah.
And you simply had too many hospital appointments every year to try and get to.
Yeah. I mean, like the average was like, with different things, like about 63 appointments was the biggest for 1 year. It was just like, seemed like he was up there all the time.
Now you aren't able to work. What do you say to people about whether you work or not?
Well, you just have to lie, basically. You just say you work from home and make up some stuff.
Because you've got a child.
Yes.
And in the playground.
Yeah, people ask questions.
What?
And you live in a decent area, and it's like, why? If you didn't work, people go, how come? And they would. But as I say, that's what it's always been like. You just have to lie all the time.
You received some money via the 1991 litigation.
Yeah.
What were you told about that?
Well, obviously, because I was a child, I didn't deal with it. My dad did. So it was because it was on a tier basis. So because I was a child and had nothing, wasn't married or had a house or had kids, I was given 22,000 for that, and then we'd had the 20,000. I think it was 89, which was just like a goodwill kind of payment that everybody had. But yeah, so it was 22,000.
Your understanding is though that there was considerable pressure to accept the settlement.
Yeah, my parents had the same spiel as everybody else did about signing a waiver, but like my dad's adamant that he didn't sign a waiver because he wouldn't have. He said I wouldn't have signed anything. The only thing he signed was to actually, obviously you had to sign for the money, but there was nothing. I mean, I've got that piece of paper at home that he signed, but it was nothing like a waiver that's saying you're signing this to sign off any other viruses you might have in the future. There's nothing like that.
You've also received money from the McFarlane Trust and from the EIBSS.
Yeah.
What's your experience of the McFarlane Trust been?
Terrible at times. I mean, at the beginning, when it was first set up in '89, they couldn't do anything anybody wanted. There was throwing money at people. But as it kind of went on, and the Department of Health was starting to get a bit disappointed that people weren't dying quick enough. that's when like the screws started to get tightened, where it started to be difficult to get things, and everything you wanted, you had to have your consultant, your haemophilia doctor who dealt with HIV most of the time. You had to get a letter from him, and then sometimes your social worker as well. And it was just a pain in the neck. You know what I mean? And it just got to a point where you just like, you just can't be bothered with it. I mean, and this was at a time when there was like sitting on, like a fund of like 7 million.
For you, when you made an application for larger sums, you felt that it was overly complicated.
Oh yeah.
And took too long.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, like the census forms I used to do for working out, what they called like discretionary pay. And it was just like household income, what your missus earns and stuff like that. I mean, what has that got to do with, what is my illness, my virus, whatever, has got to do with her? And that's how it was, whatever, and if you've got to, there's thresholds of amounts, and, if you went over one by like 20 quid, that's what that's the level you had. There was no, leeway either way. They wouldn't go, as you've gone over by 20 quid or 30 quid or whatever, you can have that. It was like, no, you're in that bracket.
You said in your statement we all needed the grants as we were skint. It felt like they were dangling a carrot and controlling your life. Yeah,
well, that's just the same as that's how it's always been. The carrot's been dangling for decades, and it still is. Still is. With the schemes now, and they've changed it all. The rules of the new schemes, the model of it is still, MFT original. They've recently changed it and knocked on the head, applying for top-up pay, but that hasn't materialised yet. And I've had nothing through to tell me of any dates that anything's starting. So, until it does, you just take it with a pinch of salt.
So that's in terms of the very recent increases. You've not heard whether or not you will receive.
Oh no, I will receive it, but they're very lax on information. You know what I mean? Like it's like next July 14th is like the next payments, but you can guarantee that we'll be told 3 days before that, and that's how they always operate. Usually on a Friday as well. So if anyone's got any complaints, you can't moan at nobody until Monday.
Those are the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you would like to say?
Yeah. It's just really about the government's attitude with, what's gone on. And I keep hearing, it was an accident, we didn't know. So like in my individual case, there was 3 so-called accidents of infection over 6 years. Well, 4 if you throw in CJD. Nobody can say that the warning signs wasn't there. To me, it's clear what went on. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my parents' fault. We put trust into our doctors treating us and the Department of Health to supply us with clean factor. The only mistake that we made was listening to the lies of reassurance from the doctors and the Haemophilia Society telling us that it was safe to use when it wasn't.
I'm just going to turn and ask Mr. Cummins if he has any points he wishes for me to raise. Just one point he's asked me to raise with you. Are you receiving any ultrasound or liver scans in relation to the hepatitis?
Yeah, I have a yearly ultrasound, and I have a fibre scan like every couple of years. So yeah, they are monitoring me, and obviously my bloods are checked regularly with everything else. But yeah, I'm just going to finish off with this.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you'd. I'm so sorry.
No, it's all right. I'm just going back to what I was saying about what's gone on over the years. And I think, it's been 33 years from the day, from when I was infected with HIV, 39 years from my first hepatitis infection. And as far as I'm concerned, the government has been given far too long avoiding paying proper compensation for killing people and ruining people's lives and prospective careers and just wrecking your life. The inquiry, I know the inquiry is going to be, 2 years, but, it's just going to be another 2 years of being tormented. Department of Health have got everybody in the palm of their hand with the funding and these schemes and stuff like that, where they haven't come out and guaranteed anything. As far as I'm concerned, they can pull it off us if they wanted to. And what would we do then? As far as I'm concerned, the buck stops with the government, and it's time they acknowledge this by admitting liability. There's enough proof out there now that this should never have happened, any of it. That's basically it. I'd like to thank Sir Brian and the inquiry team for the opportunity to do this, and Collins for getting us to this point and all the support they give us. Without them, we would all still be at home kicking the cat. Not really. Okay.
So, Brian, do you have any questions?
Can I recognise your courage? You haven't told friends of yours that you've known for 30-odd years. You've tried to keep it to yourself, and yet you've come to tell total strangers your story. And that takes quite a bit of courage. So thank you for that. Thank you for giving evidence.
Thank you.
We will take a break until 12:10.
Thank you.
And 12:10, I think we will hear from Susan Harrison.
That's correct, sir.